My mother Elaine passed away on a cold March afternoon that no one was prepared for. The heart attack came suddenly, cutting everything off, as if someone had just slammed the final door between us. I was 34 then, living with my husband in the suburbs of Seattle. My mother, a widow for nearly 2 decades, still lived in the small house on a hill south of Portland. The place where she once taught me how to cook stew with a silver spoon, and where she once looked me in the eye and said, "Ivy, don't love someone who can't keep their promises." I didn't listen. We were no longer as close as before. Every time we talked on the phone, she gently asked about my health and work, but never once mentioned my husband Derek. Not because she forgot, but because she had seen something I deliberately ignored. When we first started dating, Derek knew how to win my mother over. He helped carry her bags, invited her to fancy restaurants I had never dared to enter. But everything changed quickly after the wedding. Whenever my mother called to check in, Derek always made excuses to avoid her, or frowned if I said I wanted to visit. I used to think my mother was too strict. She never openly criticized, but whenever I mentioned Derek's plans, like opening a cafe, investing in NFTs, or changing to a luxury car, she would just sip her tea, look out the window, then sigh softly. I hated that silence. It wasn't loud, but it kept me awake at night. Then she died. When I received the call from the doctor at St. Helens Hospital, I just stood, frozen in the office hallway. The morning news was still playing on the lobby TV, talking about hailstorms, but to me the whole world had frozen. Derek acted very considerate. He hugged me at the funeral, laid the white bouquet on my mother's grave, and whispered into my ear, "You still have me." I wasn't clear-headed enough to think of anything else. For the next 2 weeks, he was almost a different person, making tea every morning, picking me up from work, cleaning the house, things I hadn't seen him do in 3 years. I started to believe maybe he was grieving too, and that tragedy could change a person. Until the day I got a call from my mother's lawyer's office. "Miss Ivy, this is Mr. Walsh, your mother's legal representative. I need to meet with you in person about some documents in the estate file." I was at his office the next morning. The air smelled of oak and old paper, reminding me of the high school library. Mr. Walsh sat behind a large desk, wearing glasses and reading thick documents, his voice hoarse but clear. "Your mother left all her assets to you, including the house in Portland, a long-term savings account, some stocks and investment funds. The current total value is approximately $580,000. I was pulled back to reality. The small house I thought was just an old place full of memories turned out to be just the beginning of a larger estate than I had imagined. I drove home with an empty mind. But one person was not surprised by the news. Derek. He hugged me, smiling emotionally. "Your mother knew you deserved it. She thought about you until the very end." I was half touched, half suspicious, but couldn't yet name what made me uneasy. I began to sense a change in Derek just days after the meeting with Mr. Walsh. At that time, I was still vague, not fully understanding the numbers in the asset statement left by my mother. But Derek, he clearly didn't need time to adjust. "I think it's time to consider a new car," he said while cleaning the living room window frame that I had never seen him touch before. "That old Subaru doesn't suit someone with nearly $600,000 in assets." I turned to him, trying to smile. "The car still runs fine. I don't think I need a new one." "But you deserve better," he said, stepping closer and hugging me from behind. "A Mercedes, for example? That's the kind of car a woman like you should drive. Your mother would agree." I stood still, my heart twitching. There was something in the way he emphasized deserve that made me uncomfortable. It was no longer the familiar pampering I knew, but felt like a subtle and calculated invitation. Then by the weekend, he printed out a bunch of real estate marketing emails. "Ivy, look at this. There's a house in West Bellevue with a private pool and Italian-style kitchen. You'll love it." I flipped through the pages one by one, staring at the 7-digit numbers under the photos as if they belonged to someone else, not me. "I don't want to move," I said quietly. "Mom just passed away. I'm not ready for something so big." Derek nodded, pretending to understand. But the next day he brought home a flyer from the golf club. "They have a special membership offer," I asked. "If you pay for a year up front, you save almost $2,000. I don't play golf, and him? He used to say he hated wearing khakis and fake smiling in front of bosses, but now he carefully folded the flyer as if holding a ticket to a completely different world. "Why do you keep thinking about spending money?" I asked. My voice wasn't loud, but enough to stop him halfway. "Mom left you the assets. You're still grieving and you need time." Derek's gaze was fixed on me, his lips pressed tightly together. "I just want us to enjoy life. Don't make me feel like an outsider in this." I turned away. If anyone was the outsider here, it was me, watching my husband shift from a comforter to someone craving what wasn't his. Since then, there were no more morning coffees Derek made for me like in the past 3 years. No more texts asking, "Did you eat lunch?" during work. He started sleeping in his office, saying he didn't want to disturb me when I had trouble sleeping. But I knew the real reason. It wasn't care. It was a deliberate withdrawal. At night, he sat in front of his laptop, typing quickly and shutting it down the moment I entered. One night, I woke up to the sound of the keyboard clicking. I stepped out of the room and caught him opening 3 browser tabs, 2 about divorce property laws in Washington state, and 1 for a law firm website. I stayed rooted in the shadows. My heart didn't race, it only felt heavy, like someone placed a large stone on my chest, and I knew I was about to sink to the bottom. The next morning, I tried to pay attention. He didn't look me in the eyes when we had breakfast. The familiar question, "Is it good?" was now just the sound of a spoon tapping against the porcelain bowl. Every word he spoke, if any, revolved around spending, plans, and the opportunities he thought we were missing. I told this to Grace, my best friend, on a drizzly afternoon while we sat in the car waiting at a green light. She wasn't surprised. "Ivy," she said slowly, "I know you don't want to believe this, but Derek isn't grieving your mom. He's mourning an opportunity he thinks he could control." I kept quiet. The rain pattered against the car window. I wondered if this was the moment my mother once warned me about with her silent looks long ago. Maybe all her coldness toward Derek wasn't harshness, but wisdom? And did I let the man I chose see the assets before he even saw the pain? A month after my mother's funeral, I was washing dishes in the kitchen when Derek came in, placed the car keys on the table with a cold clack, then leaned against the bar. No eye contact, no greeting. "I think we should separate for a while." I looked up, still holding the plate I was wiping. Those words felt like a bucket of cold water thrown straight in my face, even though I had anticipated this. I set the plate down in the sink and slowly turned to look at him. "Why?" I asked, trying to keep calm. "Because things have changed. You've changed, Ivy." He crossed his arms, trying to sound light as if discussing buying a new TV. "Since your mother passed, you've been colder, distant, and you no longer see me as your partner." I smiled bitterly. "Interesting. You lost your mom less than 2 months ago and you're already planning to change cars, buy a house, and play golf with the boss? And now, since I won't let you touch that money, I'm the one who's changed?" "I didn't say that," he quickly dismissed. "I just think maybe we need time to think things over." "You don't need time," I answered, my voice lower. "You need a way out. And you think I'll scream and beg you to stay?" Derek was speechless. I clearly saw something shift in his eyes. Not regret, but surprise. Surprise that the woman standing before him was no longer the fragile wife he once knew. I pulled a cream-colored envelope from the drawer and lightly threw it on the wooden table. "Before you move out, there's something you should know. This is a copy of the clause in my mother's will." He hesitated, opened the envelope and pulled out a paper marked clearly with orange highlighter. His eyes scanned the bolded sentence. "If my daughter, Ivy, is married at the time of my death, she shall not access any part of the estate until the divorce process is complete. No spouse shall inherit, access, or represent financially any part of this estate." I remained motionless, observing every subtle shift in his expression, from indifference to confusion, then pale as paper. His throat swallowed hard. His hands clenched the paper as if to crush it. "This is real?" he whispered. "The court notarized it, the lawyer's office confirmed. The will is legally binding under Washington state law." "So that means—" He didn't dare finish. "Yes. If divorced, you inherit everything. If not, all the money goes to the charity my mother chose, the National Breast Cancer Research Foundation." He sank into a chair, his face as white as a sheet. Your mother planned this ahead? She knew who was with me for me, and who was there for what they could take. She set a trap for me, Derek muttered, still in disbelief. No, I said, looking straight at him. She protected me. Maybe that was the last time she did that for me, and the most effective. He rubbed his forehead, so silent I could hear the dishwasher running in the corner of the kitchen. I don't really want a divorce, he finally said. I just thought you needed a push, some distance to look things over. You think threatening to leave me will scare me into sharing the money? I interrupted. No response, but his eyes said more than any excuse. And in that moment I felt like the person on stage, the spotlight exposing the mask of the man who had slept beside me for 3 years. I'll contact my lawyer tomorrow morning, I said, my voice so calm even I felt distant. You can stay in the living room for a few days while you pack, but all financial access is locked. Derek said nothing, just stared at me, eyes empty. Maybe for the first time he could no longer play the perfect husband. The curtain fell, the act was over. I sat in my mother's study, still smelling the lavender oil she used every night, flipping through the papers in the old wooden box that Mr. Walsh had sent with the will. Among the documents, I found a thick journal, carefully bound, every page handwritten in neat black ink. The first line on the cover page made my heart slow. Ivy, if you find this journal, it means I'm no longer by your side. But I have never stopped protecting you. Drawing in a steady breath, I started reading. The first page was a list, no title, no explanation, just dates and brief notes. April 2021, Derek asked Mom for $40,000 to open a cocktail bar in Belltown, declined. August 2021, Derek took Ivy out to dinner, suggested Mom co-sign a bank loan to invest in land in Boise, declined. January 2022, Derek messaged privately asking if Mom was interested in a new NFT project he was very confident about, declined, no reply. The list went on. I flipped through each page, each note cutting into me like a knife. Mom had seen clearly what I refused to. Derek's unusual eagerness for money. Not just mine, but anyone's money, he thought he could exploit. One page in the middle of the journal had a longer handwritten passage, different from the earlier notes. As if Mom was no longer writing for herself, but starting to write for me. You once asked me why I didn't bless your husband's dreams. I didn't answer because I knew that when you're in love, you don't hear warnings. But I have a deep feeling that he sees you as a door to something else. Not love, but gain. And if I'm wrong, you will forgive me. But if I'm right, I have prepared. I sat frozen, the desk lamp casting light on that delicate yet firm handwriting. It was like Mom was sitting right in front of me, looking at me with the eyes that once made me sulk as a child. The eyes that said without words, she saw through what I was trying to hide. I thought of all the times Mom gently declined Derek's offers, the furrowed brows when he bragged about plans to open a creative studio or import Italian wine, though he had no experience other than weekend drinking. I used to think Mom was too strict, that she was imposing a perfect mold on the one I loved. Turns out she was just watching, taking note, quietly building a fence. I remembered our last conversation, a few weeks before she passed. At that time, Derek had just been denied a business loan by the bank and suggested I borrow from Mom one last time. I called, hesitant, not even finishing my sentence before Mom cut me off. Daughter, I'm always willing to help you, but when it comes to Derek, I'm sorry, I cannot support things I don't believe in. At that moment I felt hurt, angry too. I thought she refused because she didn't trust me. Now I understand she was trusting me differently. Trusting that one day I would see the truth, and that by then I would need a plan already ready. The room felt quieter as I closed the journal and held it to my chest. I held back tears and panic alike. All I could sense was this. Mom was still with me. Derek thought he had everything under control. He assumed I would weaken, would share the money for the years we lived together, but he didn't know that my mother, a lifelong accountant of principle and clarity, had quietly written a script in which he was only a wrongly cast supporting role. And that role was now coming to an end. Derek didn't surrender easily. 2 days after I gave him the copy of the will's clause, I received an email from the real estate lawyer's office, the same who helped us sign the apartment lease 3 years ago. They said Derek had come by, requesting a review of personal property rights in marriage, claiming he had indirect contributions to my financial stability. I stayed silent, but my own lawyer, Linda Marsh, a New York-born woman with a sharp demeanor and a memory like a tape recorder, just shrugged after reading the email. "No legal value," she said firmly. "Your mother's will is an independent agreement, conditionally binding, built on Washington state's personal property law. No one can touch that money if you remain legally married." Derek then sought out another lawyer, a former MBA classmate now working at a small Tacoma firm. They tried to focus on his emotional and psychological contributions to the marriage, but all arguments fell flat. Because my mother didn't just prepare me mentally, she prepared the law. The will was established 2 years earlier, past 3 rounds of legislative expert reviews, no loopholes, no mistakes, not a single phrase could be twisted. And when the court reviewed the file, the judge made it clear. This estate is personal property, granted under specific conditions. The current spouse has no financial rights of any kind if the conditions are unmet. Derek said nothing after that hearing. He left the court with a face cold as ice, clutching his leather briefcase. 2 weeks later, he officially signed the divorce papers. Silence filled the space where claims should have been, replaced only by a hurried signature at the bottom. I think he understood. Whatever he dragged on only made him look worse. Derek left the apartment with his 2013 Toyota Corolla, a gym bag, a few suits, and more than $9,000 of debt from 3 credit cards he hid from me. I kept everything my mother left, the house in Selwood, 2 long-term savings accounts, and a share in the real estate company she had quietly invested in. I used to think divorce was failure, the final fall, but when the man you once shared a bed with calculates your worth, the only real failure is the trust you gave to the wrong person. The day Derek moved out, he left a short handwritten note. "I'm sorry. I was blinded. You deserve much better than this. I wish you happiness." I folded the paper, without replying. And then, silence. No texts, no drunken midnight calls, no pleas to come back, maybe because he knew there was nothing left to hold on to. As for me, I don't need to look back. My mother saw what I dared not face. She built a gate, put the key in my hand, then quietly stepped back. Derek thought he could walk through that door with a smile and a few "for you" lines. But my mother, the quietest woman in those heated dinners, left a legacy not just of money but of deep protection for the daughter she knew one day would need it. I submitted my resignation on a Monday morning, right after the divorce was finalized by the court. The office was completely silent when I walked in to turn in my notice, but I didn't feel regret. 10 years working in marketing for a tech company with endless deadlines, virtual meetings at 6 a.m., and a manager only caring about growth metrics had drained me in ways I didn't realize until everything in my life collapsed and had to be rebuilt from scratch. For the first time in a long while, I had no packed meeting schedule, no overwhelming emails, no need to keep a bright face during presentations I didn't believe in. I walked out of the office building on my own 2 feet. Not because I was forced out, but because I chose it. I started taking on small branding consulting projects, only working with people I trusted and found valuable. Less income but more freedom. I worked from my mother's kitchen, where I put back the long wooden table she once used to cook pumpkin soup every early fall. That house I'd renovated a little, no major changes, just repainting the walls, replacing curtains, and adding a reading chair by the window. Every afternoon, I'd sit there with a new novel and a cup of chamomile tea. Mom used to say, "Irmy, no pain is too deep to be softened by the afternoon sun and a good book." Now I understand she wasn't just talking about books. I also started replanting the backyard garden, the one Mom tended every morning, rain or shine. I replanted lavender bushes, cherry tomatoes, and mint, exactly where they used to grow. When watering, I often talked to myself, as if Mom was still listening somewhere behind the grapevine, climbing over the wooden fence. That very garden sparked a small idea. I posted a few photos on social media of outdoor reading sessions under the apple tree, with homemade cookies and some classic novels. Unexpectedly, the post got lots of positive comments, mostly from middle-aged women in the neighborhood who had known Mom or heard about her from church charity events. And so the Saturday book club was born. 6 women at first, now 12, gathered weekly at my house. We read all kinds of books, from Agatha Christie's detective novels to nonfiction on life skills, and of course, never without Mom's walnut waffle recipe. But the thing that changed me most deeply wasn't the new work or the book club. It was the trip to Italy. The dream I'd put on hold because Derek always said it was too extravagant for just 2 weeks off. I flew to Florence in late April, carrying a blank journal and a light heart. I went alone, no itinerary, no guide, just me, cobblestone alleys, and the soft Italian drifting from street cafes. I spent hours in the Uffizi Gallery, speechless before the birth of Venus. I stood in San Marco Square in Venice and cried when a woman sang opera impromptu. I spent a morning in Tuscany picking olives, then drank espresso with an old farm lady who didn't speak much English but insisted on calling me figlia, daughter. Every moment in Italy was like a tiny stitch mending the broken pieces inside me. No one asked whose wife I had been, what I lost, or how many chances I had missed for happiness. They just saw me, a woman starting over, needing no one's permission. 3 months later, I returned to Selwood. The house was still quiet, the garden still green, and my savings untouched. But one thing was different. I no longer felt afraid. Not afraid of being used, hurt, or trapped in conditional relationships. Some afternoons, I sit in the backyard corner, where Mom once placed a single wooden chair next to the lavender, and just be. No thoughts, no words, no trying to make sense of what happened. I simply exist there, under dappled sunlight filtering through the tree canopy, surrounded by the smell of herbs and the silence I once mistook for loneliness. Now, I call it peace. Once, while watering the tomato bed, I paused because an older woman's gaze lingered at the gate. With a gentle nod, she said, "Elaine's little girl has grown into the strong woman she hoped you'd be." I never caught her name, but those words stayed with me for a long time after. My mother was never loud. She loved with patience, showing it through small acts, like folding towels neatly in the closet, preparing cold medicine for me in winter, or quietly setting terms in her will, leaving no chance for anyone to harm me after she was gone. I used to blame her for silence, for not supporting my emotional choices, for holding suspicious looks instead of speaking outright. But now I understand. She didn't want to control me, she just wanted to protect me in the most careful way a mother could. When alive, Mom often told me, "There are things you won't understand until you have to endure them yourself." I used to dismiss that, thinking it was an old-fashioned saying, not accepting change. But it turned out she was right. I loved the wrong person. I trusted promises wrapped in sweet but empty words. I closed my eyes to small signs, calculating looks, vague questions about money, hugs that no longer felt warm. And then Mom, even though she wasn't here anymore, was the one who woke me up. I'm not sure how many people are as lucky as me to have a mother wise enough to see every trap before her daughter did. But I'm grateful to be one of them. Every decision I made this past year, from quitting a stressful job to the trip to Italy, to recreating the backyard garden, bears her mark. Not because I'm living for Mom, but because I'm living the way she hoped I could, free, strong, and refusing to let anyone define my worth. I used to think divorce was the end. Now I see it as a door opening to a life I never dared to dream. A life no longer about compromise, no longer about proving myself to those undeserving. I still keep the last photo with Mom. She's smiling, not brightly, not posed, but with the smile of someone who knew she did the right thing, even if no one understood it then. That photo is framed on the mantel beside a copy of The Will, like a symbol of quiet love that never fades. Sometimes, I still get brief messages from Derek. No clear apologies, just vague things like, "I just passed by our old spot," or, "Are you okay?" I don't reply. Not out of hate, but because I have nothing left to say. The person I need to talk to, I do every day. In every gardening session, every book club meeting, every time I write in my journal by the window, my mother. Thank you, Mom, I whisper into the deep purple sky whenever dust covers the backyard grapevine. Thank you for loving me the way only now I'm grown enough to understand. Mom didn't remain beside me to lift me from the pit. All she had to do was set the ladder in place, angle it right, and trust I'd be wise enough to climb. And now I stand in a place higher, brighter, and more peaceful. Because of her. What do you think about Ivy's decisions and journey? Leave a comment to share your thoughts. Don't forget to follow the channel so you won't miss the next touching and meaningful stories about life and family.